Hi, and welcome back to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park, eh? So this week, the Canadians are kind of taking over, and Beth's kind of on her own. So first of all, though, before we get started, we wanted to address the events in North Carolina from last night because I think it's on everybody's mind and it's an important thing. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that before we get started and introduce our guests this week. So Beth, I know you've got stuff.
Well, I'm an atheist, so fucking what? This is from an article that came up today, and it's about 5 minutes before I left for work, so I really didn't get a chance to address it. And it's basically, there's a part in it that goes, there is a distinction to be made between atheism in its pure sense, which describes anyone who does not believe in God or gods, and new atheism, the contemporary phenomenon of aggressive disbelief coupled with a persistent persecution narrative, led by such luminaries as the late Christopher Hitchens and evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins. New atheism takes as its core creed a species of Enlightenment liberalism. We don't have a creed, there's one mistake. That exalts reason and free inquiry without bothering to define reason or to explain what is worthy of inquiry and why. Atheism is atheism. We can be really super simple about it. Like she said, lack of belief in God or gods. We could get more complex and go into an essay that Dave Foda wrote comparing atheism and epistolism. But atheism had nothing to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you take the religious bullshit out of it, okay, including the atheism. You got some crackpot with a gun that shot 3 people. 3 people lost their lives because they were shot by some idiot. Plain and simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And to address that too, I'm going to pull up something that I actually wrote on my wall on Facebook and read that to you guys because it pretty much summarizes how I feel about the whole thing. So basically it says that I'm an atheist and an anti-theist, and I make absolutely no apologies for that. I attack this. And I also believe that murdering any person is morally reprehensible. So Craig Hicks, which was the shooter, is an atheist too. But thus far, there's no evidence that the shootings had anything to do with that. Shooting people over anything aside from self-defense makes him a scumbag, no matter what his personal worldview or philosophy is, or what motivation he might have had. The people are still dead, and he's still a scumbag. So we have atheist bigots, atheist rapists, atheist thieves, atheist murderers. Atheists sometimes do shitty things. And that's one of the harsh realities of life, and I accept that. There's nothing we can do about that. The difference here is that I and the majority of atheists are not doing things like blaming it on Satan or sin or not praying enough or someone insulted Darwin or Dawkins, persecuted, so we have to lash out. And I'm not going to say he isn't a real atheist either. I read the guy's Facebook page. I have actually shared some of the same posts that he had. That page could belong to me or anyone else that I know. So I'm not going to say that he wasn't a real atheist. But I'm also not about to shoot someone over a parking space or because I think that their religion is disgusting. But there are 3 people who died, and they did not deserve to be shot down in cold blood. And I feel for their families. I absolutely do. I've lost people, and I know how shitty that is. But blaming atheism or calling it a hate crime won't make them any less dead. It won't bring them back. But we should punish the guilty and comfort the bereaved. That's what we need to do now. And going on and on about something that, let's be honest, we don't actually know any facts about anything on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to start off, too, I may as well go ahead and introduce our guest, Chrystalla Sui, who's from Toronto and a local atheist activist. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. I'm curious, did you have anything to add to that before we get started?
Well, I'm the type of person that doesn't like to jump to conclusions. So, I mean, I want to wait for the police to do their investigation. Obviously, this person was disturbed. To shoot anybody is disturbing. But when you're in a situation where you're living in a quiet college campus town and you're disputing over a parking spot and that somehow motivates you to murder 3 people, is just, it's sad, it's sickening, it's inhuman. Like I posted as well something about that on Eon Network, that the fact that an outlined piece of pavement can be of more value than human life is disturbing to me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, but whether or not he was motivated by ideology or by racism or whatever, or by mental illness, which is what his wife is suggesting, that remains to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody that I know and has been discussing this has universally condemned the whole thing, and the fact that anybody can, sit there and go, no, boo-boo, look at you atheists, it's ridiculous,
Yeah.
And even if he was to come out and say, I shot them because they're Muslims, that's still on him. That's still an individual bias. There's nothing about being an atheist that says we have to hate a certain group or want to kill people the way religious texts do. So, in my opinion, it's comparing apples to oranges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also that this is an isolated incident. If this type of thing happened with many atheists and they just started going around shooting people, then we would say, okay, maybe there's needs to be some reform. Because I did see a comment about, does this mean that the atheists have to be reformed now? And which I found ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you're talking, he was comparing the atheist community, which, doesn't even make sense anyways, to the moderate Islamic community, where they say Islamists or Muslims need to reform or need to talk about reform within their community. I mean, this is an isolated incident. We don't know the motivations yet. I mean, that's just, exactly comparing apples to oranges. I won't even there yet.
I think what's so upsetting, coming from my point of view, is that if you look at how the Reich applauded Jared Lauer, Timothy McVeigh, the guy that shot Till, the abortion doctor, they are basically venerated. Okay, and there are numerous other examples of those of the religious bent that have killed in the name of their religion or because of their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Not one, and I'm talking the bigwigs. I'm not talking. There have been some that have condemned those, condemned the actions. But there, as far as the bigwigs, the mouthpieces of the movement, not one of them have ever condemned those shootings.
And the other thing that tends to happen when someone shoots up an abortion clinic or blows one up or something like that is one of the first things we hear is they weren't a real Muslim or they weren't a real Christian. Mm-hmm. If they were practicing, read the Bible, they would know not to do that. Like it's just, it's, yeah.
And that's the thing that's so mind-boggling is that if you did go to his Facebook page, if we're going to judge people, and this is when the news first broke last night, it was probably about 1 o'clock when my news feed started filling up.
Yeah.
It was, atheist kills Muslims. Now they've kind of backed off that a little bit, but they were like, oh, his Facebook page is this, and his Facebook, and I'm like, I went to his Facebook page, and I'm like, okay, if we're gonna judge this dude based on his Facebook page, what are people gonna think when they look at my likes?
Yeah, my Facebook.
I go from Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple up to Richard Dawkins and Freedom from Religion Foundation. I also have Carm. I have Answers in Genesis. I have Kent Hovind. I have Ken Ham. What are people going to think about my Facebook page? Not only that, I have some, I follow the conspiracy nuts. I follow that friend, Alex Jones. I mean, if someone were to judge me based on my Facebook page, they're going to be really confused.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I posted things more harsh than Buddy did, too. I mean, now we don't know if he's got other things that only his friends can see, because I wasn't his
True.
friend. But, I mean, just looking at what he had on there, I'm like, I've posted things that are worse than
that. I write about things worse than that. It's mind-boggling. I mean, and it's sad because we live in a high-tech society, but yet, if the allegations of the parking spot is correct, 3 people lost their lives over a fucking parking space. I mean, this guy couldn't talk to them.
That is almost worse than something that's racially motivated. I mean, being racially motivated is horrible, but you can kind of see the twisted logic in something like that. But a parking space?
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah.
We can't even hold a simple conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're too, and I'm just as guilty of it as anybody. I mean, I get home from work and people don't see me till I go back to work because I have my face crammed in my blog or on Twitter or my news feeds. It's just like, but to kill over something so inane, it's just we've lost our ability to talk to each other.
Yeah, we
and
need
that's what's sad to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, a symbol of loss of humanity. The fact that we're even defending whether or not this is about atheism or not, the fact that these 3 people are dead and, seemingly over a parking dispute.
Yeah. I mean, take the religious bullshit out of it, including the atheism aspect, and what it boils down to is a nut job with a gun killed 3 people over a fucking parking spot.
But I think it is important to distinguish, because I think people have a hard time distinguishing between criticizing an ideology over racism. And they think that the minute you criticize an idea or criticize a religion, that automatically makes you racist, or a bigot, or hate speech, or whatever people call it. And I think that is important. And I think when you do look at things uncritically, and people throw the word Islamophobia around in the media all the time, and somebody who doesn't really read up on this stuff might say, oh, yeah, that's horrible, this guy's an Islamophobe, and they might look at his page and just come to that conclusion because it's very easy to make that kind of assumption without thinking a little bit more deeply on the subject. And so I think it is important to differentiate between criticizing an idea and being racist. Now, he could have been criticizing an idea on Facebook and behind the scenes also been a racist person. So, like I said, we don't know the motivation.
Yeah.
Now, what he's presenting to the world on Facebook, I mean, people present all kinds of false things all the time. Yeah. He could have been presenting something camouflaged as, criticizing Islam or an idea or the religion itself, but behind the scenes could have also been, very different from where we're coming from when we criticize religion.
Right.
You know.
And I know the father of two of the victims had been claiming that they reported he'd been harassing them and that he was openly saying, things about their religion and whatnot. But even that, to me, if you're having an interpersonal conflict and you're a douchebag, you're going to bring in things like your religion or your culture or that sort of thing too. So that doesn't even necessarily mean that it was specifically racially motivated or religiously motivated. That could have been just another arsenal in his tool of douchebaggery.
Yeah, it could have been just one element of a number of different elements that caused him to do this. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not a black and white issue, right?
And as I said too, it's not like he ran up with, the God delusion going dark and straight and then shot them. That's the distinction, because I know there'll be somebody saying, well, you could say that about other religions. Well, when the people are saying specifically this is religiously motivated, I don't know how you can get around that.
We should believe them. Yeah. When people say I'm doing this because of my God, then we should believe them that they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, okay, well, let's talk about something a little more upbeat. So, and first of all, Spencer Lucas sends his regrets, but he was actually unable to make it this evening. But we'll be fine. We've got our lovely ladies here, so we're gonna have a fun time anyway. So, as I say, Chris is from the Toronto area, and she has started something called the Aeon Network. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Well, the Aeon Network is, it's kind of like a Yellow Pages for atheists in Ontario, plus a little bit more. And the reason why I started it was because there was so many more groups than I thought when I first started looking. And I was pretty new to the community. I wasn't really active before, about 4 or 5 years ago. And even 3 years ago, I was more involved with the Cyprus Freethinkers before that, which is where my parents are from, back home. And they have a little free thought community there. And so I was like, oh, well, I wonder what's going on in my own backyard. I don't even really know. So, of course, I knew of CFI Canada and of Humanist Canada because they were this sort of two big organizations, charitable organizations that most atheists or non-believers know about. But then I started finding more and more and more and more. Most of them were like little groups with like 10 or 15 people. And even in the small towns, I thought, wouldn't it be great to just put this together and show everybody how many groups we actually are and how many people we actually are and how diverse we are, and how amazing would that be on a visual, like on a map. So I started making this map, just showing all the different groups and organizations and meetups in Ontario, and there is like 80 plus. I think now there's more than 100 actually.
Oh, wow.
That I've added on within Ontario alone, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And every time I post about it, it's great because, I get somebody messaging me going, oh, I didn't know this group existed in my little town, and, which is great. That's the whole purpose of it. So.
Absolutely. And for our American friends out there that might be watching this, Ontario is our province where we live. We're the one with the pointy bit that kind of goes down into the Great Lakes there.
Yeah.
And the funny part, and I have a couple of friends in the Chicago area, I'm like, you guys are more north than we are, man. Like, in fact, Beth, David Michael, I've teased him a couple of times that it's colder in Chicago than it is here. So, although we have a cold weather advisory for this evening, so that should be fun.
That's fine.
That's awesome, though, and I know, well, Chrystalla had hosted us at her house for dinner this past weekend, which was really awesome, and we talked about some of the goals and things, and one thing that came up and I think is really important, and a lot of us find that, is making sure people know that they aren't the only one in their community. And I know here in Canada it's not as big of a problem because we're pretty open about, people not believing and things like that, as it might not be, well, where Beth lives, it's she lives in the
I am all by myself.
She lives in like back.
Only one vocal. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were talking about how even in Canada where things are a lot different, there are those people out there that might be, surrounded by a religious family and they've grown up, with church community and whatnot, and they may not know about any other people. And I think that's an important aspect of what you're doing with the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think some people do want to reach out to a community. There's the Sunday Assembly now that started in Toronto. And, for me personally, I'm not really into going to a Sunday Assembly. I'm perfectly fine not doing that. But some people, would love to get together in that sort of ritualized type of manner and sing songs and, do whatever they do. And that's great. All the more power to them. And, my network allows people who want to find out about these resources to find them and be able to go to these things. So, the network is nonpartisan. We have, I don't care if you're right or if you're left or if you're for Sunday Assembly or if you don't want anything to do with, community and you want to be an anti-theist, hardcore, nomad. That's great too. Everyone is welcome. And, the whole point is that we are such a diverse group. We're not really a group, we have one thing in common, that's we don't believe in a supernatural power. Some of us are free thinkers, some atheists are not free thinkers, some are humanists, some are not humanists, some are skeptics, and some are definitely not skeptics. Yeah. I know a lot of atheists who aren't skeptics, so, but there's something for everyone, and I think also bringing it to sort of the mainstream and having people realize that, we're neighbors. There's lots of us here. Because in Toronto, it's kind of, a lot of people are non-religious and, whatever that means for them. And, we're kind of open about that. But sort of when you drive a little bit out of this main city, it's definitely not as liberal. And I think the network is important for that reason as well.
Absolutely. I mean, where I grew up in the Mitchell Stratford area, it's there are farms that I know of that for the 30 years driving by, they've got the big Jesus Saves sign out in their pasture field, and those folks are out there, and who's to say they don't have family members that don't know that they can be a non-believer and find other people that are non-believers out there. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely important to make those resources available to everybody. And like you say, whether you, like, I wouldn't be into a Sunday Assembly either. I don't like to get up anywhere before, 1-ish on a Sunday. Yeah. Kind of thing. And I have better things to do with Sundays, but there are a lot of people, in my personal opinion, I could be wrong, but I think that kind of a venue helps a lot more with transitioning out of faith for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. and there might just be that sense of maybe there were things that they liked about church and that gives them that same kind of feeling, whatever, if you like it, you like it, great. And to know that you have that available is going to be the important thing, not that, I don't get to go to church anymore, whatever. Just to know that you have those things out there is great.
Right.
I think it's an important thing. And you've got, one thing I like is you've got the monthly calendar that you have on the website that highlights all of the events going on every day almost, really.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, for people that want to meet up and just go for a coffee or a beer, or get together for a talk, or there's little mini talks going on all the time all over the province. Even within the organizations, and sometimes just with these small meetups, like they'll have a speaker come and just talk to the group. And so what a great way to inform yourself on certain subjects, whether it's secularism or atheism itself or humanism or feminism or whatever it is. So I think that's really great, and why not, right? Somebody had to do it. It was going to be me.
Awesome. And that's how I got in with my local group, was the meetup. They posted a meetup to go see this creationist guy talk, and I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. And the rest of the more active members happened to be there, and after we finished grilling the guy, we all went out for wings and drinks and stuff after, and it was great. And now I go to the meetups, and I'm a meetup organizer now somehow. That happened. So it's just those little connections that can help grow into a lot more. And it's just really important, for sure.
Of course, and especially when it comes to things like, with an emphasis on Canadian issues, because I don't know about you, but for me, the American voice regarding atheism and anti-theism is very strong, very loud. They're very organized, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But then, I know of a lot more important or out there sort of atheists from the States, and I didn't know any here. I knew maybe 2 or 3. So for me too, same boat, right?
Yep, and I kind of have been feeling bad about that lately, because I have a fabulous group of American atheist friends, and I'm learning lots from them. I'm learning, doing shows and things like that. And then I kind of think about, wow, I don't really know what's going on at home so much anymore. Like, and I can tell you, like, who the major political players are in the right-wing nut job sphere, and what kind of idiotic things that they've been doing lately. And I'm like, other than Harper being a douchebag, what else have we got going on? And and that's why I wanted to start highlighting folks like yourself, is because we need to get louder. And in fact, I was telling my friend Paul just about an hour or so ago, he does the Coronify Me podcast, and saying about Canadian atheists, and I said, well, they say, organizing atheists is like herding cats. Well, organizing Canadian atheists is like organizing cats that are stoned out on catnip, because we're kind of apathetic.
Yeah.
But Deb, do you think, and Chris, you too, do you think that that's more because religion being in your face is not so much an issue up in Canada as it is for us here down in the States, or do you just think that's more of a personal quirk, like for you, Deb?
I think definitely I can't really speak to my American friends, because I haven't lived there, and I haven't lived in the Bible Belt, so I don't know what that's like. But it does seem to me, at least, that it's a direct response, like their loud voices and their ability to organize and get people on board so loud and so strong is a direct response to these Bible-thumping people who are also very loud. And it seems to be a need.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a need.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, just to illustrate that, Chris, my friend Ashley lives in Savannah, and there was a story just last night in a school not far from her where in the States they have something called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and they work to enforce the constitutional separation of church and state where it's being violated. And this school in Georgia, the teachers there was a family with two atheist children, and the parents had expressed, they complained because they were forcing prayer in the school curriculum, and that is actually illegal. They can't do that. And so the Freedom from Religion Foundation was getting involved and whatnot. But the teachers were doing things like they actually took one of the children aside out of their recess and lectured them about how important it is to have Jesus in your life. And one of the teachers even told one of the children that they should not listen to their parents because their parents were bad people. They didn't have Jesus.
Yeah.
That's how bad it gets down there.
Yeah.
And I mean, poor Ashley was bouncing off the Facebook walls last night. Ooh, was she mad? I know
she was probably stroking out. I mean, and the sad thing is, that comes not even a year after a similar case in Alabama, where a young boy who was Buddhist, the administration of the school actually said to the parents, well, can't he be another religion?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's, you guys don't really have that up there, right? I hope.
No.
Well, you do, but it's not so overt, I don't think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like now we have in Ontario, we have the lovely separate school board, which for those of you who don't know, in our province, Catholic schools have their separate school board, and they're actually funded by the province. And the way they get away with that is when people are filling out their tax forms, they're asked, would you like to support the public school board or the separate school board? So they're basically claiming, well, it's only the Catholics that are supporting the Catholic schools. But it's not that simple. And my niece is being raised in a Catholic school, and she was going to a Catholic high school, and they have to go to religion class, and she's a very open-minded girl, and she was, being told that gay people are sinful and they can't, that they're bad and all of that, and she knows gay people, and she was so upset by that, and a kid shouldn't have to go. And I mean, I can imagine that she's just being empathetic to her friends, what a gay child who's being subjected to that would be going through. So, and there's a push right now to get rid of the public funding for the Catholic school board. So I really hope that gets some traction, because that needs to go.
Yeah, it's just an old way of doing things, and never mind the religious aspect that that we don't like. The fact is, it's just financially a stupid model. It doesn't make sense economically. So, I mean, if you want to take the ideological part out, I mean, the other argument is just as valid. So,
yeah, because we have schools from both boards that are being closed because of lack of students, and it's partly because they're being separated out when that's not necessary. Like, just make it public, and if you want your child to go to a private school, then that's your business, and you take care of that on your own. But the public school system should just be the public school system.
Yeah. And also, there's the religion class, which some people know is not mandatory. You can get out of religion class. And there was actually recently some flyers going around, and there's a picture on Eon Network that I posted of Eric Thomas. He's actually the president of Humanist Canada, going around to the Catholic schools, handing out these flyers saying, get out of jail free. Because it's not a mandatory class. And, some teachers are trying to force the kids to go to these religious classes, and actually there's a big fight against that right now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, these things are issues, and making people aware of them is hugely important. It's secularism in Canada, and it is an important thing.
Yeah.
Well, for both.
Yeah, go ahead.
For both of you, I mean, obviously you're both Canadian, dumb question, but if there was one issue besides the issue with the schools, what do you think your number one issue up in Canada, especially in the Ontario area, as far as being an atheist, besides the fact that, like as you were saying about Anne, you're trying to connect these smaller groups into one, to as a resource. Besides that, what's your biggest issue, do you think?
My biggest issue with Ontario in general, has nothing to do with the Eon Network, but
yeah, just in general. I mean, what is, as far as being an atheist, what do you see as the biggest issue?
For me, the biggest trend that I've been seeing is anti-science.
Yes.
In Canada, and cuts to research funding, cutting the experimental lakes projects, and climate science denial, and anti-vax, and all this. It's just gone nuts. It's gone crazy. And to me, that is important everywhere, not just in Ontario, but especially with our government. He seems to be all about, the muzzling of scientists and not letting them speak publicly about their findings. And when they are allowed to speak to the media, they have to go through all this red tape to do so. And actually, there's an organization that sprung out of that response called Evidence for Democracy, and that's headed up by Katie Gibbs, who's a PhD scientist out of Ottawa. And so they're doing a lot of great work, so if you want to check them out. And they talk about on that subject, and to me, that is the most important issue right now, because an uninformed democracy is not a democracy.
Exactly, and we saw her speak in November, and I was floored. Like, I knew there was a problem, but I was just floored at how bad it was. Like, I did not know that they were sending government minders with scientists at international conferences. Like, that's like right out of some kind of fascist state. Like
that kind of blows my mind. I mean, coming from, I mean, wow.
Yep. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's been a gradual chipping away for the last decade or so. And I think a lot of people that aren't actively looking at this don't really even know about it.
Well, I didn't. I mean, I'm not a sciencey kind of person. I mean, I will debate evolution with nut jobs, but I don't really delve into it a lot because it's not something that's a huge deal for me, and I didn't know because I don't follow that kind of stuff, and that's why I was just so floored by Katie's speech. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, damn. and it's
now,
an issue. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that chipping away is religiously motivated?
I don't know if it's religiously motivated. I mean, our government, like Harper himself, is said to be an evangelical Christian. Now, that being said, I don't know whether his motivation for this research funding cuts is due to that, or because he really believes that the cuts that he's doing is through efficiency. I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it is ideologically motivated because it's just too much.
Well, and the thing that gets me is when he first came into power, I was really concerned because memory serves, I believe he's a Pentecostal, which is kind of up there in the weirdo scale. And there was a lot of mumblings when he came to power. Oh, he's going to do something about gay marriage, and he's going to do something about abortion. And I was at least impressed at the beginning where he kind of went, no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Are you crazy? But it's almost like he's channeled that, you know, he knew he couldn't do that, so he's going to mess with what he can, and that turns out to be science.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why he didn't touch those topics isn't because he's a good guy. It's because he knows it would be political suicide.
That's right.
But in this way, he's being very sort of sneaky, cutting here, cutting there. And if it wasn't for groups like Evidence for Democracy, hey, look what's going on. And this research is getting cut, and this guy's getting cut, and that's getting cut, and we're not able to speak to the public. I think a lot of people wouldn't even know. They wouldn't even know about it because nobody's talking about it to the media because they can't talk about it to the media.
Yeah, that just floors me. Just floors me.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's a very narrow-minded approach. He's not looking at the bigger picture, because when you're doing research and you're informing the public about what's going on, you're actually helping progress. Maybe not for tomorrow, and maybe you're not helping tomorrow's economy, but maybe you're helping it 50 years down the road or 100 years down the road. And so I think his approach to efficiency is very narrow. So.
I just find that really, I guess, bizarre, for lack of a better word. Earlier today, I was going through my feed, and I'm a little bit behind, about 2 weeks. And there was an article where Jim Inhofe, he's a right-wing whack job, and he's like dancing around all excited. He goes, saying he's declaring victory for climate change denialists, saying that we've won because a recent poll has shown that he goes, clearly we have won. The Gallup poll shows that it's now issue number 14 out of 15, and it's no longer an issue. We've really won on that issue. And it's just like, you would not think, I mean, the Canada that I knew when I used to travel up there for hockey and stuff, and when I lived in Hamilton, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's very unexpected from my perspective too, but it's Harper, what are you going to do when you have a fundy in office? It could have been worse, though. We had a guy remember Stockwell Day, Chris? I was married to an American at the time, and I told my husband then, I said, if that guy wins, I'm out of here. We're leaving. But funny thing, I forget what denomination he is, but this guy, Beth, he was running for prime minister, and he is like super duper fundy bot, and he made this great big stink about how he was such a good Christian, he wasn't going to campaign on Sunday, and so he just had a camera crew follow him on his picnic with his family, so he was not campaigning on Sunday.
Oh.
That really made me laugh, but yeah. But one bright light, though, just last week, our Supreme Court struck down the ban against assisted suicide, so that's really big.
Yes.
And that's something else. We had a speaker at the same conference talk about the death with dignity, and that's just such a huge deal.
Yeah, and that was Jack Pash from Dying with Dignity Canada.
Yes.
Yeah, he was an amazing speaker. I loved what he had to say, and he was right on the ball with everything, every argument. And the funny thing is, what is it, like 80% of Ontarians, I think they had a map with all the percentages and all the people who wanted assisted suicide or who were for assisted suicide, and it was well over 70 to 80% for every single province. So, I mean, it was a matter of time. But yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. So I hope they do something positive with that, because I'm not sure. What are they, now that it's been struck down, are they telling the province that they have to come up with a new law or something?
yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen now. I haven't really read any more on that subject yet, so.
Because usually the way it goes is they'll tell them that they have so many months to come up with something better, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, was that a national thing, or was that just within Ontario?
Dying with Dignity Canada?
The law, I think she means it was.
Yeah, the law.
Oh.
Was that, like, for all of Canada, or just specifically?
Yeah, I believe it was the Supreme Court of Canada that made the decision, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the whole country, then.
Yeah. This is good. Yeah, one nice thing about Canada is we do have things that are separately provincial, but we're nowhere near as segmented the way the United States is.
That's where I was going for, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure well, I know you are, Deb. Chris, I'm not sure if you're aware of Roy Moore down in Alabama.
No.
He's the head judge of the Alabama Supreme Court, and they legalized gay marriage through our national Supreme Court, and he's refusing to recognize the Supreme Court ruling. And that's what Deb's. I mean, we have a couple states that are trying to pull that crap.
That would be like Wynne saying, "Oh, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. Ontario is going to do this." Meh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is awful.
Yeah, I know. And he actually told the registrar offices that they don't have to issue marriage licenses for gay people, even though the law says that they do.
Well, and he's actually threatened them with being fired and sued and fined and all this other crap on top of it.
Yeah.
This is
nice.
Yeah, he's a.
How is that legal then?
Well,
it's not.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
The argument they're going to base it on is we call it states' rights, and the minutiae I don't have clear in my head, but basically he's trying to push the issue. They're testing the waters to try to force the Supreme Court and or Congress to make a national amendment to the Constitution to define marriage as only between a man and a woman. That's the big issue. That's what they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Supreme Court, they struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, but not entirely, and they haven't given like a concrete ruling, a countrywide ruling, and that's why all the states are bringing it in piecemeal, state by state. But the religious nuts are hoping that if they push it to the Supreme Court's going to side with them, and I have a feeling they might be sadly mistaken. But
yes, according to recent articles, basically Clarence Thomas has pretty much said that the Supreme Court's going to rule in favor of gay marriage, but I don't count my chickens before they're hatched, because our Supreme Court right now is a freaking mess. I mean,
yeah, they voted on Hobby Lobby, like, oh well.
But yeah, there's some really crazy stuff when we get into the Supreme Court issue, and this is the thing. I mean, I call it they're trying to get the spaghetti to stick to the wall. Well, I have to give Roy Moore credit. He's got fucking balls.
Yes. To stand there and say a federal court judge basically, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want, like, woo.
Yeah, I gotta give him credit. He's got balls, but I think he's sadly mistaken in the sense, I mean, my whole premise behind what's going on is that, as I said, spaghetti sticking to the wall. Is they're really the extreme right is really pushing the limit with all these religious liberty cases, and it's coming from big money. That it's their ideology that they're trying to force a theocracy is what it is.
Yeah.
And this is just they're testing the waters.
I think it is time for the creation moment for this week, so I'm going to play that and give us all a little break here. As my window wants to agree with me. Technology is great when it does what you want, huh?
Yes.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. A well-made banana is just the right shape for the human mouth. Chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier.
I choose to believe that the earth is young. When we do that, when we understand that creation is the truth, then we understand where all of our doctrine comes from as well.
I just want to let you know that there actually is a book out there that actually tells us where matter came from. Bill, I want to say that there is a book out there.
Next time you hear on television somebody say millions of years ago, what's the question we're going to ask them? Were you there? Were you there? Call them up on the telephone and say, excuse me, Mr. TV man, were you there? Only way we could know what happened in the past if someone was there to tell us. That's right, dinosaurs lived beside people. And of course you'll have an evolutionist who'll say, that's not right, dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. What do you ask them? Were you there?
Hello and welcome to this week's Creation Moment, a little slice of creation silliness I get in my email every day, and I'd like to share it with you so that we can all get a taste of just how crazy creation shit is. On this week's Creation Moment, Ian Taylor tells us about what he thinks are ancient Irish monks. Can't wait for this one.
There's long been debated whether Christopher Columbus or Leif Erikson was the first European explorer to discover America, but it's beginning to look as though this debate is beside the point. One such evidence is found in inscriptions found in West Virginia. These inscriptions are in a language called Ogham. Ogham is a written alphabetical language in which the orientation of the vertical and angled lines to a central horizontal line determines what letter it represents. The inscriptions were made sometime between the early 6th and late 8th centuries AD, almost 1,000 years before Columbus.
So this doesn't have much of anything to do with creationism at all. Why do they care? Well, if there was proof that Christianity was brought to North America even earlier than thought, it would seem to give even more legitimacy to the idea that the United States is a, quote, Christian nation, and that Christian values are the core part of the culture, especially if there were monks here before the Vikings who were, of course, pagans. Be careful, Mr. Taylor. Don't fuck with history on my watch.
The form of Ogham writing used in the inscriptions was developed by the ancient Irish Celts. How did ancient Celtic writing find its way into West Virginia only 6 or 7 centuries after Christ? The answer may be in the inscriptions themselves. Each inscription offers a Christian message. One reads, quote, "The season of the blessed advent of the Saviour, Lord Christ," unquote. It has been suggested that the writers were Irish monks who, in obedience to the Great Commission, set off to make disciples of the American Indians.
Okay, Taylor, now you've gone and done it. No, no, and no. Irish Celts developed Ogham writing, all right. But that's decidedly not what was found in West Virginia. Ogham writing was very neat, organized, and linear, especially for its time. The inscriptions were almost always a name and not sentences like those being claimed here, and certainly not anything of a Christian nature. This is a lie created by a fellow named Barry Fell, probably sometime in the late 1970s. He'd found these petroglyphs, or ancient carvings, and tried to convince the scientific community he'd found proof of Celtic migration hundreds of years before Columbus. No one believed him. So, in 1983, he wrote about his, quote, findings in a magazine called Wonderful West Virginia, purporting to show how he proved the petroglyphs were in fact Ogham writings talking about Christ. He flat out lied about it. By 1989, a paper was published from the West Virginia archaeologist that thoroughly debunked Fell's claims. One look at the original Ogham stones from Ireland next to the petroglyphs from West Virginia makes it obviously they aren't remotely the same. Fell took the lines from West Virginia and moved them around to suit what he wanted, added lines that weren't there, and extrapolated vowels that weren't there either as he saw fit. It was posited that Fell started out with the Christian inscriptions he wanted to, quote, find, and made shit up as he went to make the carvings fit into what he wanted. It was also discovered that Fell had obfuscated his credentials as a Harvard professor. He was a professor at Harvard in marine biology. He didn't know shit about archaeology or linguistics or ancient inscriptions. And once his work was reviewed by actual archaeologists and linguists, they pronounced his works to be a hoax. Mr. Fell was an utter fraud. And people who try to fuck with history really piss me off.
In a previous program, we have looked at some evidence that people of the Old World commonly had knowledge of the New World before the so-called Dark Ages. We are also planning more such programs, so these inscriptions may easily be a sign of Christian missionary work in North America.
No, they aren't. Not even close. I hope if you're going to do more programs about your silly notions, you actually try to use some facts for once. Not holding my breath on that one, though. Then there's the prayer. I thank you, Lord, for those who brought your word into my life. So, phony ancient Celtic monks told everyone about God, huh? Yeah, didn't think so. Anyway, that was this week's Creation Moments. Yeah, don't mess with history, man.
Yeah.
You really don't want to do that. And in case anybody... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you'd think they would learn after David Barton, but I guess not.
Yeah. Well, and you know, too, that outfit that I had on there, that's an old picture of me when I used to do historical recreation, and that is actually a ancient Celtic outfit correct to the period that they were talking about. So, kind of cool. So, yeah, that guy, I was astounded by what he did to make that shit work. Like, if you saw the picture where the lines were kind of, like, all over the place and going at different angles, and he took that out and, like, straightened them all out, and, and they weren't grouped together, so I'm going to group them together to what I want, and, yeah. Really
yeah,
crazy.
I was wondering about that when you had showed it to me earlier. I was like, I didn't have time to Google it, but it's like, do you guys have trouble with revisionists up there, like with like David Barton, like people who try to like change your Canadian history?
Other than our Prime Minister, no.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, he's trying to change history as it happens, kind of, but yeah. Aren't we due for an election soon?
Yeah.
Good. God, we gotta get rid of that guy. Because a lot of our American friends don't realize that we actually don't have term limits, so if he can convince enough people to vote for him, we could have him, like, indefinitely.
That actually sounds kind of scary, but although if you follow the right down here, they're expecting President Obama to run for a third term.
Right, even though it's not actually possible.
No.
So, Chris, tell us a little bit about you. How did you become an atheist? How did you decide to get active? What led you down this road?
Well, it kind of interesting, I guess. I don't know. I was never really religious. I always used to, because I grew up in with Greek Orthodox family, and I was raised as a Greek Orthodox, and my parents are from Cyprus, and I went to church with my cousins and all of that, and it was mostly to hang out with my friends. In Sunday school, I didn't really care. And I think a lot of people going to Greek church felt the same way, because it's all done in ancient Greek. You can't understand any of it. So we were just like, yeah, whatever. Let's go hang out with our friends. And when people used to ask me about religion, I would say, oh, I'm Greek Orthodox, but I don't believe in any of that shit, and, nonsense. And the major reason why I was led down that road was because of being a woman, of being female, and what that meant, and being sort of a second-class citizen, and just even the most mundane things, like in my church you had to wear a skirt, and if you wore pants it was like, a sin, it was like an abomination. I was like, I don't think God, being this almighty being, would care about the latest fashion trends of the 90s and that girls are not wearing pants. I don't think he cares about this, Mom and Dad. And I'm a woman, and I think sex is good, and why is this seen as a sin? And like, I was just very skeptical about all these things, and I questioned a lot, and I didn't know if there was a God or if the story of Jesus was true. But that wasn't really my concern. I was very against organized religion, and I thought it was pretty corrupt. And I thought that people that went to church were mostly there to show other people that they were there. It wasn't for any spiritual reason whatsoever. And I felt like, if they saw a homeless person on the street on their way to church, they would like easily not care, run them over, or not give them food or whatever. And to me, this was being godly. To me, if you were a godly person, you would care about your fellow neighbor and sort of have these humanist principles. And I saw that a lot of people didn't. And of course, they used their religion to be even more atrocious than normal. It sort of was like used as a scapegoat. So, I mean, for me, I saw that very, very early on. And so I was always against it. And one day I fell upon this article, and it was about, I had been reading a lot about Eastern philosophy and Buddhism, and I even read some of Chopra's books, which after the second one was like, this guy's nuts. And I had no history. I had no, like, I wasn't briefed on him. I had no idea. I was just like, okay. I was going through a divorce, and I was trying to, like, find myself again. And I think a lot of people go through that, and I was never into self-help books, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll pick up this self-help book, and it was like 7 ways to be more spiritually and successful or some bullshit like this. So I was reading it, and I'm like, this is absolute crock of crap. I don't know how anybody can even get through this. I mean, this is nonsense.
Did you have Caesar dressing with that?
Oh my gosh, it was nuts.
The guy is like the king of the word salad.
And I had never studied any philosophy. I never studied critical thinking. Like, I just knew that it was like hogwash, complete and utter crock of shit.
Yeah.
So, and that's just mild compared to how I really feel about him. So, I mean, that was that. And then I found the term atheism, and I had never really heard the term before 5 years ago. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what free thought was, no idea what humanism was. So I just like became this sponge. I just started reading all these books and trying to, read a lot of philosophy and history of atheism and just philosophical thought in general, and fell in love with all of that. And so here I am.
I find, I don't know about you, but we never really studied any philosophy in school at all. I don't know, did you ever get to take any?
No, we didn't.
No. And a lot of my American friends actually did do that, and I kind of sometimes feel it as a disadvantage because they're talking about, Plato and all kinds of various philosophers and stuff, and I'm like, I think I might have heard of that at some point. and I'll tell you, Chris, the one that really floored me, and I think Dave is watching by now because he asked me for the link, but Thomas Paine. Have you heard of him, Chris?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I never read him because they don't make us read that. And Dave gave me the link to read Age of Reason, and I'm utterly floored that someone in the 18th century would even put down on paper, I don't think there's a God. I was like, huh? Holy shit. So I sometimes feel at a disadvantage with that we don't seem to feel the need to teach those things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to learn those things, and I think that's something that in North America is lacking. I mean, a lot of people don't learn philosophy until they go to college or university, whereas in Europe, it's kind of taught in school, and people just know about it. They know their politics, they know their philosophy, they know their history, and it's just something that's known. It's kind of taken for granted. But here, there's a lack of knowledge on these subjects, and I think they're hugely important because philosophy, to me, doesn't teach you about how to think, it doesn't teach you what to think, it teaches you how to think. So, and I think critical thinking, no matter what you may believe or not believe or are unsure of, or, you may be an agnostic, whatever the case may be, I think understanding these questions and understanding how a question is formulated and how an argument is formulated and learning how to question, I think is hugely important. Absolutely. I think some people have it naturally, but some people don't, Some people don't question, and they just don't question naturally. They think, oh, this is the way things are, and that's what I was told, and this is what I believe.
Yeah. And if you ask some of those people, well, why do you believe that? And they often won't be able to tell you.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Because that's what Mommy and Daddy told me, or that's what Pastor told me. I mean, I went through that until I hit college, and even though I went to a Christian college, I seemed to lucked out and ended up with, I'll say, a more liberal, because, it was a liberal arts program. I read Thomas Paine in college while I was studying to be a minister and ended up coming out of college as an agnostic because of it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that was something I was really excited about at the conference, and you probably remember the, who was the gentleman that was the professor of critical thinking?
Oh, are you talking about Christopher DiCarlo or Doug Thomas? Not Doug Thomas, sorry, Doug Cowan.
Not Doug, the other one. The gentleman who announced that he was creating the critical thinking curriculum for the Ontario School Board.
Right, that was actually Christopher DiCarlo.
That was so, I remember when he said that and the whole room just went, yeah! It was so amazing to hear that something like that was being created and that's going to be made available in our schools. We need that so badly.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. 100% agree. To me, that's one of the most important things is to have sort of this philosophical knowledge and teaching from a very young age. And I think kids grasp these things really easily. I grasped evolution when I was really young. My parents had me hooked on David Suzuki, The Nature of Things, and National Geographic.
Yeah. So
when people told me, of course we don't come from monkeys. We were, came from a rib and 6,000 years ago. I was like, what? You guys are nuts. Didn't you ever watch any friggin' nature TV?
The nature of things, come on.
Those animals that are all fighting and killing each other and mating, that's what we're doing. We're like that. We're no different. So
exactly. And I sometimes think that it's harder for children to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, because I remember as a young child when my family wasn't even overly religious, but just being made to go to Sunday school and crap like that, and I remember hearing some of the stories and like going, really? That was real? Huh? And just like feeling when the family would pray over dinner or something, I was very uncomfortable with that at the time, and I was like 5-6 years old, and remember being like, well, I'm just supposed to do that? Why? I don't get it. But after a while, you kind of are like, well, that's what mommy says I'm supposed to do, so I do it. But I don't know. I think it's sometimes harder for kids to amalgamate into that religious mindset at an early age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think kids ask a lot of questions. At least for me, I did. I always asked a lot of questions. And, my father was not a very religious man. And he kind of had this mentality like, I'm going to show you certain things and I'm going to read you certain things, but I'm not going to tell you not to be religious, and I'm not going to say anything against religion. You'll just figure it out on your own when you get older.
Yeah.
So he's the one that used to buy us the Nat Geo and sit us in front of the nature of things and buy us different stories and tell us different stories about the Greek mythology. So it was very aware from a young age that there were many, many different gods and many, many different religions around the world that people had believed in the past that they didn't believe anymore. So, there was this fundamental understanding that maybe this is a transient thing, that maybe religion is just inherent in human beings, and that we need to create some kind of spirituality for ourselves or some kind of supernatural force to make sense of the world. But it's not necessarily this particular God that we believe in now. It's not necessarily the one that we may believe in 100 years from now, just like we didn't 200 years before or 1,000 years before.
That's kind of what did it for me too, was that being a history nerd and realizing, well, yeah, we don't believe that Zeus throws lightning bolts anymore because we know where lightning comes from, and that realization that it's all the same kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think a point that you hit on that's important and what people don't realize, especially here in the States, is the whole critical thinking issue. And this is from the 2012 Texas Republican platform, what they consider important as far as regards to education. We oppose the teaching of higher order thinking skills, critical thinking skills, and similar programs that are simply relabeling of outcome-based education, which focus on behavior modification, yada, yada, yada. So here is a Republican platform for state education saying that they do not want to teach these skills. Yep. But yet they'll turn around here, I don't know if this is a problem up there for you guys, they'll turn around and say that, they don't want to teach them, but yet we're not teaching our kids anything.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Crazy.
That's anyway, mind-boggling.
I know. I know, Chris, you haven't seen some of the crazy shit that my lovely American friends like to show me. It's very enlightening, to say the least. So, at the moment, this week, Beth has actually done a segment for us. So I'm going to play that, and we touched a little bit about it last week about the lovely, crazy anti-vaxxer people. And so Beth has done a piece, and I will play that for us now.
Welcome to a preview of Havoc and Chaos Live. 2 years ago, I somehow managed to contract. The exact details really aren't important. I've been battling it ever since, although thankfully I have been clean for 9 months, but I still battle some of the after effects. Working with the general population in customer service, one is prone to such things, colds, flus, etc. After having a second hole drilled into my armpit, I have a total of 5. 4 on my arm, and 1 on the back of my neck. I found out that there were individuals wandering town with the same infection I contracted. I found out as well that these individuals had refused treatment and care from their medical providers, ignoring the impact that their illness could have on those around them. Now, as a diabetic, I have to rely at times on others doing the proper thing in regards to community health, just as I have to take care of my health so I don't make somebody else sick. Sound a little bit familiar? So, when someone like Glenn Beck states, I'm going to say no to those vaccines because I've done my homework, I get a little fucked off.
I'm interested in moving forward. I'm interested in moving to common sense. I'm interested in moving in a direction of freedom. And so when it comes to these measles vaccinations, we have a lot in common with the left. And we can't separate ourselves. We have to reach out to allies that say, okay, I disagree with you on many things. On this, let's agree. Let's move forward on this. None of us want measles. None of us want our children to have measles. None of us want to have an outbreak in our communities. Nobody wants anybody to die from measles. Nobody. So let's just have that as a baseline. Nobody does.
Right.
Common sense, freedom, and allies on the left. Well, Mr. Beck, common sense dictates that one follows the evidence as presented by science. Vaccines work. Freedom has a price as a citizen of this country. That is, following the mandates and the laws of our country. Vaccines are not a rallying point for partisan politics.
However, we also don't know what's going on with autism. We don't know what is happening to our children and to our families.
Glenn, you hyperbolic twit. We may not know what causes autism, but science is working damn hard figuring it out. Researchers have identified a number of genes associated with the disorder, have found irregularities in several regions of the brain. Other studies have suggested that people with autism have abnormal levels of serotonin or other neurotransmitters in the brain, leading researchers to explore disruption of normal brain development early in fetal development. Now, while these findings are intriguing, they are preliminary and require further study. Hence, science? Although science has not given us a specific answer as to the cause, it has given us therapies and behavioral interventions that have improved the outcomes for those affected, and has also given us a means to properly diagnose and begin the above therapies at a much earlier age.
Also, if you look at what the numbers were for autism 25 years ago to what they are now, and now they're saying it's
there's something going on.
There's something happening.
I don't know what it is,
and
but
it was
something.
1 in 300 now have autism. 1 in 300. It used to be like 1 in 5,000. Now it's 1 in 300, and they're saying if this trend continues, by 2025 it will be 1 in every 2 will have autism.
Actually, Glenn, 1 in 68 that have been diagnosed with autism. Or, correctly, 1 in 68 that have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. What you fail to qualify in your statement is that most individuals now diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder would never have qualified under the 1980 classification that did not separate out schizophrenia prior to that time. So it's not surprising that numbers have increased in the U.S. Rates of autism have not changed significantly over the past couple of decades, and a 2013 study found that identified autistic children clustered where resources for diagnosis and treatment were greater. In other words, where there's more access to diagnostic services, the autism rates are higher. Boy, that was easy. Thank you, Tara, at Forbes.com. And Glenn, citing a paper by Stephanie Seneff, not really a smart move if you want to be taken seriously. Yes, Seneff is a researcher, at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. She is not a biologist. She is not a chemist. And she really likes the exogenous semiotic entropy. Sounds brutal. Problem is, it doesn't exist in any other paper but hers. Is Derek Lowe, a real live organic chemist writing for Karante, so aptly summarizes. But the evidence given for these assertions, referring to Seneff's paper, and their connection with disease, while it might look alarming and convincing to someone who has never done research or read a scientific paper, it is a spider web of might, could, is possibly, associated with, and so on. The minute you look at the actual evidence, things disappear.
Well, I think that's concerning.
Very.
And if you happen to be a parent and you say, you know, I'm sorry, God gave me a brain.
That's debatable.
God gave me personal choice.
You sure about that?
And responsibility for those choices.
Then what's vicarious redemption all about?
I'm going to say no to those vaccines because I've done my homework.
Hopefully not at your own Beck University.
Here's another group of people that are now being rounded up and pointed at and called morons and idiots and crackpots and crazies.
All I'll say is, if the shoe fits.
Just totally discredited. If you stand out of line, where is anybody saying, my gosh, we're living in the days of Galileo. The church has become the state. And if you don't practice their religion exactly the way they tell you to practice it, you're done.
So, if I understand Beck correctly, these brave individuals who cling to a thoroughly discredited study claiming a link between vaccines and autism are actually the modern equivalent of Galileo? See, there's only one problem with this analogy, besides the fact that it didn't work last year when Glenn used it with the creationists. Galileo was a scientist. His findings, that the Earth revolves around the sun, were actually based on scientific observation and demonstrable, repeatable proof. The Wakefield study of 1998 was not. So these morons and idiots and crackpots and crazies are being discredited with scientific fact. Then again, maybe they should be persecuted. Remember that personal responsibility you spoke of? Here is what I have to say. When your choices result in the deaths of others, you do deserve persecution. So when you choose not to protect your child and others from preventable diseases, like my MRSA, you should be held accountable. This coming from a guy who literally stood up applauding parents who refused to have their children vaccinated.
I found this phenomenal. Wealthy LA schools, the wealthiest Beverly Hills areas, now have vaccination rates that are as low as South Sudan's because the parents there are opting out of vaccinating their children because it's not natural. It could, your eczema.
Seborrhea, psoriasis.
But they're having a big uptick in whooping cough and all these diseases.
I'm torn.
Why are you applauding?
I'm torn. I mean, halfway just to piss you off. But the other half is, I think that there is a lot to be said for this vaccination crap.
So, to you, Mr. Beck, I say, sit down and shut the fuck up. Thanks to Right Wing Watch for making my job, following these crazy nuts, a little bit easier. And now, back to the show.
Wow. Glenn Beck, just a special kind of crazy.
Yeah, and then about 3 days later, he came out with another doozy that it's all a hoax. But I think the file is partly corrupted, and what I had started out with is 2 years ago I had MRSA. I'm still I've been clean for 9 months, so I'm able to travel and all that stuff. But what I had found out is I was battling it. I ended up having 4 drainage holes in my arm, actually my armpit, and one in my neck. While I was going through all this, being put on all these different antibiotics, which I hate, I found out that there were 3 or 4 other people in town that also had it, the exact same strand I did. And I worked in customer service at a gas station. Right. And these people refused to get medical treatment. I don't know why or anything like that. So basically, my doctor was 99.9% sure that basically I probably came into contact with 1 or 2 of them being where I worked, and that's how I got it.
Lovely.
Yeah, so when I first heard his clip about the measles vaccine, I was like, "You gotta be serious." That's what prompted that.
Gotcha. I was just thinking, I don't even know what our vaccination laws are here. I think they're pretty strict, though.
Yeah, I think yours are actually even better than it, because you guys don't have the religious exemption, where we do.
We do.
I'm pretty sure that if you don't get vaccinated, they will eventually kick you out of school.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not it comes down to herd immunity with vaccines, and that's what a lot of people that deny them either refuse to understand or just ignore.
Yeah.
And they're looking at, like with the Wakefield study. I mean, that's been thoroughly debunked. There's no issue behind that. But Stephanie Seneff that I mentioned, she wrote a paper with another gentleman. His name I can't think of off the hand. Basically, it was written up in places like Natural News. Half of all children will be autistic by 2025, which is what Beck was referring to. But what people don't realize with Seneff is that she's not a researcher.
Right.
Okay? She did not create any new data. What she did is she compiled all the articles prior that were written and did an extrapolation of current trends definitely into the future.
Yeah.
So basically, I think we've all seen the meme where they're comparing the increase in organic foods. It's the correlation causation fallacy.
My favorite one is the lack of pirates cause climate change.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. But people are taking Seneff's study and thinking she found something new. No, what she did is she took data and just extrapolated from it. She did not research something. She did not sit down in a laboratory. She sat in front of a computer crunching numbers. Basically, is what she did.
That's pretty
so
neat.
I think the point is that anybody can find a correlation with almost anything. If you really look for it and you want to create the pattern, you can find it. I mean, it's...
Yeah. Oh, I got my gospel came in the mail yesterday, actually, and there is the lovely lack of pirates cause global warming graph right there for you in the gospel.
Yeah.
So, because if there's a book, we know it's true, right?
Yeah.
In the words of Ken Ham, we have this book.
Yes.
So, Chris, how did you end up getting into activism?
Well, I guess just through EM Network and through the non-conference last year. That's pretty much how it started. I wasn't really looking to become an activist, but I guess I kind of became one. I was sort of looking more to promote activists is what I was doing.
Yep.
So I wanted to create a space for people that were like me, that were just in search of a place to go or like-minded individuals to hang out with.
Yeah.
So I guess in that way you could call me an activist, but yeah.
Well, I think in Canada, anytime somebody gets off their duff and actually does something constructive, that counts as activism. Because we have a little problem with complacency, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a complacent. That's one thing with me that if I feel like there's a need for something, I will try and make it happen, and I will do whatever it takes to create it and make it work. So for me, when I realized that there was other people like me that were sort of in search of this type of thing and were saying, hey, this is a great idea, we need to get together, we need to network more, and we need to have a place for people to go and look.
Yeah.
That just motivated me even more to continue doing what I'm doing. And for me, it's not activism. For me, an activist is someone like Ayaan Hirsi, you know, or like Richard Dawkins, who spends his life talking about this and who spent his life in science, and now he writes his books and promotes secularism. And to me, that's an activist.
Yeah.
People like the executive director of CFI Canada, like Eric Adrians, and the work that he's doing, talking with the Office of Religious Freedom and trying to get these blasphemy laws.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's huge right now.
Yeah.
And out of Canadian law. I mean, to me, that's activism. And what I'm doing is I'm just another voice. I'm just another voice saying that, hey, these people are here, and they're in your backyard, and they're our neighbors, and let's help them out, and let's donate, and let's become members of these organizations because they're amazing, and let's promote each other, you know. So that's all.
Absolutely. And a lot of people may not know that we actually do have a blasphemy law on the books. It's blasphemous libel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so what that means is, I read it recently, and basically if you're being libeled, if they comment about your religion, they can be critical, but if they're sort of over the top, like if I said fuck Islam, that would be blasphemous libel, as opposed to, well, I'm not sure I like Islam. That's like acceptable, but when I do the fuck you, then that's blasphemous apparently. So yeah, I dare anybody to try that with me. You're not going to do so well. But
yeah.
It's scary that we still have that on the books.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people it's like, well, no one's really been charged with this for like so many years. Like it's not even a big deal anymore. It's like something that's never going to be enforced. But I think that's not even the point. I think the point is that this is an archaic law, and let's get rid of it. Let's show that we are progressing and that we don't need laws like this anymore because they're wrong. And because it is okay to criticize religion. It is okay to criticize ideology, and it's not a big deal. And let's move forward.
That's exactly right. And it's important that people understand that you don't have a right not to be offended. And yeah. I've made this point so many times. As a secularist and an atheist and humanist, I get offended by religious crap day in and day out, but I'm supposed to suck it up because I'm in the minority and being an atheist isn't considered nice or whatever, so I'm supposed to suck it up, and it doesn't matter if I'm offended all the time, but because somebody's religious, all of a sudden they're not allowed to be offended? I don't think so. That's not how it should work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this thing about getting offended has just gone out of control. Like, everybody's offended about everything, so maybe we just shouldn't talk at all. Like, maybe we shouldn't say anything, you know? We should just not have any different thoughts or have any progression in society or change ever anything about anything. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the terminology is take offense. That means that you, the offended person, has to buy into that offense. You don't give offense to someone, right? It's all about you. So even if I am and I'll be perfectly honest, when I see a woman wearing a hijab, I'm offended by that. But I'm not going to go up in her face and be like, hey, take that shit off because you're offending me. I'm going to be like, wow, that really sucks, and move on about my day. Because that's what's expected of me because I'm in the minority. But if I walk around, and luckily we're pretty good about that here, but I've heard from my friends in the South, if I was to walk around with a shirt that said, Jesus sucks, and then somebody's going to, that's offensive. Well, yeah, offend this. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really offended by people wearing their religious garb or whatever. But yeah, I totally understand that, and it's totally fine. You have your own feelings about something. I have my feelings about something. Yeah. But since when am I supposed to care if you're offended by me? I mean, why should I? Why should I? I mean, since when is your opinion equal to my opinion, and who decides whose opinion is above another's, and who decides? This is like a subjective reality, and we're just like going back and forth in this like circle jerk of stupidity. I mean, it goes nowhere and it means nothing.
That's right.
And it's completely unproductive. It doesn't solve anything.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, if I and I see women even wearing niqabs around here, which bothers me even more. But what am I going to accomplish by going and telling somebody that your face covering offends me? It's not. I'm not going to accomplish anything. So, I try to be constructive by what I do. But Beth sends her regrets. She wasn't feeling well just now, so she bowed out. But I have one more segment, our logical fallacy of the week, and then we will close things out. So give me a second here. And as people may have noticed, I've been playing with graphics this week, so hopefully this will work the way I want it to. Come on, computer, do what I want. And now it's time for logical fallacies for dummies. On this week's logical fallacy for dummies, I'm going to talk about argument from authority. Argument from authority occurs when the person making an argument is thought to be an authority on what he or she is speaking about. Now, this could become a fallacy a couple of ways. Firstly, the person may not actually be an authority on what they are speaking about, in which case they are fallaciously putting themselves forward as an authority on something they probably don't know much of anything about. The other way this can be an issue, even if the person actually is an authority about what they're talking about, that does not mean that what they're saying is always 100% true. People who are very intelligent can make mistakes. It happens. So just because somebody is thought to be an authority or actually is an authority doesn't mean that you should just take everything they say at face value. A good example of this is actually the kerfuffle with Dr. Oz that's happened recently. Dr. Oz is a doctor, and he's also a famous doctor, so there's that argument from celebrity that we talked about last week. So he's a double whammy. Everybody thinks, wow, he's a doctor and he's famous and yeah, he knows his shit. Well, not necessarily. Let's take a listen.
You may think magic is make-believe, but this little bean has scientists saying they found the magic weight loss cure for every body type. It's green coffee beans. And when turned into a supplement, this miracle pill can burn fat fast for anyone who wants to lose weight. This is very exciting, and it's breaking news. Millions of you love coffee, but now you're going to love it for a whole other reason. a staggering newly released study reveals that the coffee bean, in its purest, raw form, may hold the secret to weight loss that you've been waiting for. The study, presented at a meeting of the world's largest scientific society, triggered unprecedented excitement for a weight loss study. It showed women and men who took green coffee extract lost an astounding amount of fat and weight, 17 pounds in 22 weeks, by doing absolutely nothing extra in their day. Could this be the magic weight loss bean to help melt away unwanted pounds that you've been waiting for? Naturopathic doctor and certified nutritionist Lindsay Duncan is here with the findings. Dr. Lindsay, you love this bean. Why is that?
You know, I usually don't recommend weight loss supplements, but this one has got me really, really excited. So in the medical community, the weight loss community is all buzzing about this, and here's why. The recent study that you were talking about earlier, the participants took the capsules and they did nothing else. They didn't exercise, they didn't change their diet. They actually consumed 2,400 calories a day. They burned only 400 calories. Now that's weight gain, not weight loss. Yeah. And they lost over 10% of their total body weight.
Sounds great, doesn't it? I'd sure like to be able to lose all kinds of weight by sitting on my duff and doing nothing. But as with most things, it's usually too good to be true. Now, the fellow that Dr. Oz is talking to on the show, Dr. Lindsay Duncan, is also being presented as an authority. So here, Dr. Oz is actually appealing to authority on top of his own authority. Lovely, huh? Well, Lindsay Duncan, who is a naturopathic, quote, doctor, was subsequently fined $9 million by the Federal Trade Commission for making deceptive and unsubstantiated claims related to his green coffee products that he promoted. Yeah. And as for Dr. Oz, well, he kind of got into hot water over this and other products that he had been plugging on his show. Oh, let's have a listen.
The growing concern over those false and deceptive ads for weight loss products hit fever pitch on Capitol Hill today, and caught in the middle of it all, a celebrity TV host named Dr. Oz. You know him well. Take a listen to part of the exchange between him and one Senator Claire McCaskill.
Dr. Oz, I will have some tough questions for you today about your role, intentional or not, in perpetuating these scams. When you feature a product on your show, it creates what has become known as the Oz effect, dramatically boosting sales and driving scam artists to pop up overnight, using false and deceptive ads to sell questionable products. While I understand that your message is also focused on basics like healthy eating and exercise, I'm concerned that you are melding medical advice, news, and entertainment in a way that harms consumers.
I encourage a nation searching for answers to their health woes. We often address weight loss because, as you all mentioned, it affects about 2/3 of the population. The only message I gave was to eat less and move more, which is the most important thing people need to do. We wouldn't be very effectively tackling this complex challenge because viewers know these tips and they still struggle. So we search for tools and crutches for short-term support so people can jumpstart their programs. We use the alternative solutions often commonly used in countries, other parts of the world, like in the Ayurvedic tradition in subcontinent of India, or traditional Chinese medicine. We feature cleanses and new diet programs by promising authors. Now, many of these are controversial, as are the supplements that we research and profile. I would rather have a conversation of this material on my stage than in back alleys.
I don't get why you need to say this stuff because you know it's not true. So why, when you have this amazing megaphone and this amazing ability to communicate, why would you cheapen your show?
I actually do personally believe in the items that I talk about in the show. I passionately study them. I recognize that oftentimes they don't have the scientific muster to present as fact, but nevertheless, I would give my audience the advice I give my family all the time, and I've given my family these products.
In January, you called Forskolin, quote, lightning in a bottle, and a miracle flower to fight fat. That was just in January. So I really hope, I know you know how much power you have. I know you know that. You are very powerful. And power comes a great deal of responsibility. And I know you take it seriously, and I know you care about your listening audience and your viewing audience. I know you care about America's health. So, and you are being made an example of today because of the power you have in this space. And we didn't call this hearing to beat up on you, but we did call this hearing to talk about a real crisis in consumer protection. And you can either be part of the police here, or you can be part of the problem, and we're just hopeful that you will do a better job at being part of the police.
Wow, he's getting grilled, isn't he? And just so you know, that senator, she used to be a prosecuting attorney, so I almost feel sorry for him, but not quite. Did you hear what he was saying? Talking about temporary crutches and solutions for short term, and then talking about promoting cleanses. Dude sounds like a woomeister. I don't know. He's supposed to be a doctor, but I don't know that I would trust him for anything. So here's the example of how appealing to authority is not necessarily a safe thing to do. Yes, Dr. Oz is a doctor. He may even have expertise in a lot of the things that he talks about. But it was quite obvious that he's wrong here. The studies that they were discussing in the earlier clip, those studies were poorly executed and the data was not reliable. Those who examined the studies may have expressed some excitement about the possibility, but the consensus was that more and more thorough studies needed to be done to actually prove that there was something to the claims. Any subsequent studies have come back saying that the effects from this green coffee bean are minimal at best, and there's no proof that it does anything remotely like what these guys are claiming it does. Sorry guys, guess if we want to lose weight, we actually have to get up and, do something. Damn it. Anyway, that was this week's Logical Fallacy for Dummies. Yeah, Dr. Oz. What a goofball.
Yeah, he's a hoot.
Just about, yes. Oh, well. So we got about 10 minutes left. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or that you wanted to promote or anything like that?
Well, no, I think I've promoted Eon Network enough as it is, but I had a really good time with you coming over the other night. It was our first sort of meeting, so I was really excited that you were able to come out. And it's really nice just to be able to hang out with like-minded people. I know that some people are like, oh, we don't need a community, and it's like herding cats and this and that and the other. But sometimes it's nice not having to explain what books you're reading and who's Sam Harris and what's this fallacy and, what is evolution? I don't know anything about that. And what we're, cousins with monkeys? What are you talking about? So it is nice sometimes not having to explain yourself, because I do end up answering. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
When I tell people I'm an atheist, and they'll ask me, well, what's humanism? I've never heard of that. And what's free thought? And what's atheism? And what is all this? And so I end up having to explain it a lot. So,
yeah.
But that's not bad either. I think when people want to know, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And before hanging out with you, we had our regular meetup on Saturday, and it was actually really neat. I've only been going for, I think, 3 months now, but we actually had 2 people come up and ask us how they could join the group, which was cool. And one was this really sweet little old man, which was kind of funny. I kind of wondered, because we had a new person come and join us, a lovely lady from Brampton, actually, and she's a senior, and she was really cool. And I kind of wondered, I was like, was he interested in our friend here or us? I don't know, but But it was cool. And then another fellow later on came over and asked, how do you join the group? How do you find you guys? And we have fun. We just sit around in the coffee shop for hours and talk about stuff, and some of it has to do with secularism and some of it doesn't, and sometimes we play games, and it's just cool to hang out with like-minded folk. I'm pretty lucky in that I have a number of people locally that I do, I have I guess you could call him a nephew. He's not actually related to me, but I've sort of pseudo-adopted him since he was 10 years old, and him and his fiancée they're definitely not into religion of any stretch, and it's, we have them over regularly, and it's just nice to be able to not worry about that kind of shit, because, my in-laws are quite religious, and that, I have to listen to my mother-in-law griping about church stuff, and
Yeah.
Our pastor left and decided to move away, and now what are we going to do, because we don't have a pastor? And I'm like, open a nightclub?
Yeah. Have a glass of wine and forget about it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, we're kind of a different kind of folk up here sometimes. We, as I say, even the meetup before last, we had a guy, he came to the meetup and he was like, well, I don't know why we really need to care about atheism. I'm kind of sick of it, and blah, blah. I'm like, no, you have to keep talking, because to me, the minute we shut up and we just decide, oh, well, I don't have to worry about it, that's when we're going to get basically steamrolled by religious people who do think it's important to them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the philosophy behind atheism, I mean, sure, it's interesting in and of itself, but when you talk to an individual person, and I say, yes, I'm an atheist, okay, I don't believe in gods, to me, that's not that interesting. I've been over religion for 20 years now, so I'm not that interested in discussing if there is or isn't a supernatural force governing the universe. I don't think there is. Maybe there is. Who the hell knows? I don't care. I'm far more interested in secularism and skepticism and critical thinking. I worry about day-to-day issues, just like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
and human rights issues, and
exactly.
Raif Badawi right now, that's a huge issue, and
that's
huge. For those who don't know, he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison and lashings, I think every Friday for the 1,000 lashings. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, and I read some of his horrendous blog posts, supposedly, allegedly, that got him landed in jail, and they were so tame. He wasn't even coming out and saying, Islam is horrible and Allah is bullshit or something. He was just questioning religion in a very sort of innocent way and just provoking a little bit of thought, I think was what he was trying to do, just provoke some questioning. And for me, that was really scary that something like this can happen around the world, something that I do on a minute-by-minute basis from the time I was 12, asking my dad, what is this good for? Could have landed me in jail. I mean...
Yeah. What we are doing right now would get us, at the very least thrown in jail, if not worse, because we're women. So,
yeah.
And that's kind of what got me going, years ago. Is that maybe it's not a big deal here, but there's so many people that are being tormented and made to have their lives so much more difficult just because they want to be secular, they want to be a humanist, or they want to be an atheist, and that's who they are, and they're being made to suffer for that, and that just is so wrong to me, and I can't just sit back and be like, oh, well, I don't have that problem here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, it's important to talk about these things, and it's important to ask why this is going on.
Yes.
And, what can we do to change this situation? And also for me, coming from where I live in a very sort of free society, not to take our freedoms for granted. I mean, yes. Everybody thinks, or at least most people think, that these things are our right and that we just have them forever and we don't need to fight for them, but that's not really the case. We had to fight for these rights once upon a time, and they can be taken away. And I think it's important to understand our history, understand that we had to fight for this, and we should always continue to fight for this within ourselves and for our children and our children's children. And that's just one example.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because the minute we take it for granted, that's when we are at the most risk of losing it. And Beth and I have talked before, there are religious nut jobs from America that they feel like they've lost America, so they've been traveling, and they're the guys that have gone to Uganda and Russia and preached that gay people should be executed and that kind of thing, and maybe we're not as susceptible to that extreme, but who's to say that they can't come up here and start worming their way into our society and maybe even our governments and try changing things. I mean, Harper is a religious person, and who's to say that if someone talked to him in just the right way that they couldn't sway him into trying to repeal gay marriage or repeal or create a restricted abortion law. Like, you just don't know. And that's why we have to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, these groups exist, and there actually is a group in Ontario, and they're pretty evangelical, and they talk about the abortion question, and they're a pro-life group, and I forget the name of them, but I have them on Facebook. They're Canadian. And they're called something like the bioethics community, so you don't even know that they're pro-life. And
oh, lovely.
You actually look at it. And they go around to schools. They target schools in particular. They put up their little booth with pictures of fetuses being aborted and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, they're appealing to emotion. And, of course, if I saw a kind of picture like that, I'd be like, oh, my God, this is horrendous. Of course, I don't want that.
That's disgusting, yeah.
And it's completely based on their ideological beliefs. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at the individual rights of women. They're not looking at the choice. And this, they're trying to frame their rhetoric around, oh, but this is wrong and we shouldn't do this. Okay, but what about the person that needs to do this? What about their rights?
Yeah.
Just because you don't want to do something doesn't mean that you should take that right away from somebody else.
That's right. There's a song that I like, and it's one of the taglines: if you don't like abortion, don't get one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't tell anybody else they can't. If you don't like gay marriage, don't marry the same sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. It was lovely to have you. And before we go, do you want to just give out the website and that so people can find you?
Oh, sure. What's my website? Let me just check. You know what? Because I changed.
It's so Canadian.
You know what? Because I changed it recently, and I don't even know exactly what the heck it is. Okay, so is that bad of me? That's horrible, eh?
No.
Okay, so it's www.atheistenlight.network.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's my.
And you're on Facebook as well, Atheists Enlight Ontario Network.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope maybe in the future you'll hang out with us again. And as I say, Beth sends her regards, and she had to bow out, but it's awesome. So the Canucks take over. Woo!
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to do this, and thank you again for attending the first meeting. Super awesome.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna hang out weekend after this one, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go see Dead Shire.
Yeah, we're gonna go see Ali and do his thing.
Go see Ellie Bisbee's band and I love it because I've actually been to the Bovine before. It's at a venue called the Bovine Sex Club, and yes, we have one of those in Toronto, and it's awesome. So awesome. So I'm going to close out the show as we usually do with our good friend Dave's Humanist Creed. Once my player comes back online, because I was a dork and I closed it. Oh, technology is great when it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
We're girls and we don't know how to use it.
Oh no, I'm the tech nerd in my family, and I'm only like an intermediate user. All right, folks, that's this week's show, and we will see you next Wednesday. And our good friend Rosemary from our first official episode is going to join us again, and we're going to talk some psychology. Ooh, sounds like fun. See you next week. Oh, and I clicked the wrong thing. Ah, aren't I good?
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion. I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies. I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.